This next storm looks to be the worst storm in decades for parts of the Southwest. Let me show you what we're talking about. Let's zoom into the latest satellite feature on major Hurricane Hilary, currently up to 130-mile-per-hour hurricane. You can see the significant eye with this feature. It is already spreading its outer feeder bands into Baja California, and that will continue to lift northbound, spreading those feeder bands, getting into portions of the Southwest, getting into California as early as tomorrow. So let's take a look at the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. It does have, in fact, 130 mile per hour, still a major hurricane, continue to lift northbound. In fact, they've got hurricane warnings and watches in place for Baja California, and then that will continue to lift northbound, weakening a little bit, going into a tropical storm and making landfall. It is expected to make landfall as a tropical system, tropical storm. And if that does come to fruition, that will be the first storm to make impact in this area since 1939, folks. So it's been an extremely long time. And some of these areas could pick up the most rain they could get in a whole entire year. These are areas that only see possibly a couple of inches of rain for the entire year. And you're talking about, you know, possibly picking up that and more just within a day or two. So this is a significant event, and we could cause some catastrophic flooding into these regions. So it'll spread the winds. Here's the latest update from some of the high resolution guidance over the next 48 hours has those winds spreading into the Southwest regions, into San Diego, Palm Springs, Los Angeles. All those areas could see tropical storm force winds 60, 65, maybe 70 miles an hour is definitely not out of the question. Arizona will feel the effects with this system, and even Las Vegas, folks. These are areas that just typically don't see this stuff. Very rare that we have a tropical storm impacting these areas. In fact, that area in yellow here, that is a tropical storm warning. Yes, we're talking places like San Diego, folks. This is a very rare feat. Los Angeles, Riverside, back into Oxnard, back into Santa Barbara. Those areas up even further north into Ridgecrest. I mean, this whole area is under a tropical storm warning currently, and you can see the latest path. There is San Diego. That takes this system right over the heart of the area, and that will continue northbound, spreading its very heavy rain, and that is probably going to be the most significant concern with this system. You can see the huge area of a high risk, folks. High risks are extremely dangerous. It only happens on 4% of the times, and when they do, they can cause catastrophic flooding, especially when the areas they just don't see to get a rainfall. Yuma only averages 3 inches of rainfall for the entire year, folks. So this is some pretty dangerous stuff. There's a moderate risk, already feeling the effects into Sunday morning for this region, and that into the overnight hours transfers into a high risk. So this what makes this even more dangerous. This is going to be an overnight event as it looks to make landfall, you know, in the afternoon, but the main rainfall is going to be the nighttime. So it makes it extremely dangerous to be really concerned about flash flooding. Obviously, numerous flash floodings inundating the region, and this will continue northbound, actually spreading that moisture all the way up into Idaho. In fact, it actually even gets into portions of Canada and a couple of days or so. So we'll break down those details, but this is definitely concerning, folks. This is the latest high resolution guidance over the next 48 hours, and just kind of gives you a feel of what the models are kind of spitting out with this system, having some isolated amounts over a foot of rain, folks. We're not talking areas that see a lot of rain usually. We're talking areas that just don't see this. This is more than they would see in an entire year. So this is definitely concerning, having something like that and it come down sometimes in Death Valley. If it rains a ½ inch, you got massive flooding. So this is a huge concern for these areas that just have very dry vegetation. It's coming in fast and furious. Huge concern with major, if not almost catastrophic flooding, you know, with this particular system. And the extremely heavy rain is continued to remain intact. You can see that 993 millibar low pressure actually making landfall within California. And if that that does come to fruition, that's going to be the last time it's seen something like that since 1939. That's how rare this system is hitting the coast here. This is about 6 o'clock tomorrow, going into Sunday evening, making landfall into south of California here. But look what happens. It really doesn't die down that much. It only drops possibly 5 millibars over a 12-hour time frame, so keeping likely going post-tropical, but keeping the very heavy rain intact, and that will spread the winds and the very heavy rain up the gut of Southern California into Nevada, bringing those copious amounts of rains and the extremely high risk of flash flooding within this region. So I can't stress this enough. It's a significant event. You just need to stay home and stay off the roads. And if you are out there, do not cross something that you can't see the bottom. It only takes about 6 inches to elevate your car and send it downstream. So this is a serious threat. You need to take this seriously. And just the best advice for you is just to stay home within this region and hunker down. But, it's going into Monday morning, folks. Obviously, people have to go to work, and that's going to be a lot of rainfall heading in its wake. So this is definitely a huge concern. If it's that bad, you could probably maybe even need to stay home on Monday. So, but yes, you get the idea. I mean, it's going to rain a lot within this region, and that continues. And that's not the only system in town, folks. We're getting to the heart of hurricane season. Typically between the middle of August, the middle of October, that is the peak of hurricane season. That's the most significant time that we see the most abundance amount of storms. And that's definitely what's happening, right? We've got 4 systems out there in the Atlantic that has highlighted by the National Hurricane Center. The most furthest, closest to land is this feature down in the Gulf of Mexico, spreading its moisture, going to be impacting areas into the Gulf Coast regions. They have about a 50% probability of this actually becoming a weak tropical storm before it makes landfall. But we've got a massive ridge across a good part of the middle of the country. You can see the latest update from some of the ensemble guidance, feeling the effects of that massive ridge. The stronger this gets, it's continued to strengthen. Just a massive, biggest heat dome we've seen in many years. Also, you can see the extremes here going to push this system further south. So if anything, if it does actually become a weak tropical system, it's going to push it well south and push it into Brownsville, if not almost Mexico, spreading those rains back into South Texas, likely into Mexico, while we're watching these other features out here in the Caribbean, and also another 2 features out here in the Atlantic continue to lift west and northwest bound. But almost border to border, folks, this is a massive heat dome from Texas almost to Canada, right? Very rare feat that you see such a massive area of heat warnings, excessive heat warnings. We're talking 110 plus heat indices, air temperatures 110, 100, 110 plus across these regions. And then there's the green on the map with all the flood watches, compliments of Hilary, spreading into California, back into Arizona, almost the entire state of Nevada. When's the last time you saw that? The entire state of Nevada is under a flood watch, folks. This is what we're talking about, heading into Oregon, heading into Idaho here with those very heavy rains. And this track will likely keep it as a non-tropical system, but the low pressure center will actually spread it into Canada, really. But there's the massive heat domes first. This is a rare feat in itself. This is something that you typically don't see, this like such big of nature across multiple states. So you've got this massive heat dome, very, a lot of high pressure, very sinking air, basically puts the brakes on any tropical system that even tries to come close to that. It just gets squashed down in that atmosphere. That's exactly what's happening. And I think what's going to happen for the rest of August. So here's the latest update on the track of Hilary, bringing those very heavy rains, spreading it all the way into Canada. If anything, this could help some of the wildfires that are actually helping, and still going, unfortunately, in Canada. But again, this is not going to be a tropical system by then, but it still could, spark some, showers and rain, some beneficial rains across these regions, as it will continue to be, into the gets lifted up into the jet stream across these regions and spreading those heavier rains northbound. But you can see the circle in the middle, right? That is your donut. That's the heat dome. So you got all the action out west with Hilary pulling its moisture up the southwest, up into Idaho, spreading it into Canada. And then there's that system in the Gulf of Mexico that gets squashed, likely into very deep South Texas. We're talking the Rio Grande Valley region, maybe even parts of San Antonio still could be north of this system. All that rain will be shifted south. So really the heaviest rain is actually going to be in Mexico, probably from this system. Just really feeling there's just the massive effects of that heat dome. And beyond Thursday, going into Friday, heading into the end of the week coming up, there's the heat dome, right? If anything, it loses some of its intensity across the upper Midwest, but it reinforces itself over a good part of the southern plains where it's basically been all summer long. And that's exactly where it's going to be parked again, heading in towards the end of August. So what that's going to do is we've got these little tropical systems, right? We've got these little tropical disturbance, tropical waves down there in the Caribbean. There's that system that's currently out there in the Atlantic now, tries to get close to Cancun, to the Yucatan here, trying to, lift into the Gulf of Mexico, but it's feeling the ridge. It's feeling the ridge every step in its way. And with that ridge, with that big dome of 594 DM high pressure going into the weekend, next weekend, that will put the squash and everything where it's comfortable and cool and a little bit more unsettled. It keeps continuing into the Great Lakes as well as on the Northeast and New England. So it's been a very actually comfortable summer out there, pleasant light conditions, but the heat just continues to be the real deal across the South. And that's going to continue through the end of August, the 25th through the 30th timeframe. The cooler game in town is going to be across the Great Lakes, as well as into the mid-Atlantic regions, into the Northeast, while the ridge of high pressure squashes down. The main heat will be continued over Texas, but really going to be draped across the Southeast, and that will keep any tropical type entity down there in the Caribbean, right? So all the rain will be squashed. So you have that system, trying to lift northward, getting close to that ridge, but then it just feels the effects is just way too strong, and it keeps it farther south. So any rain that could be lifted through the end of the month for a tropical type entity will be parked itself over the Bahamas, into the Yucatan, and down there into the Gulf of Mexico, and not actually get close to the US with that dominating ridge of high pressure. And there's the latest update from the Climate Prediction Center, kind of implying the same thing, folks. The ridge will be over the middle of the country, shifts further south going into the next week, and then elongates and parks itself over Texas again, Oklahoma, and a good parts of the Southeast. Not just the 25th and the 26th, but likely going in through the end of August with that continued heat continue to take shape in a lot of the areas that they've seen it really all summer long. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update where I protect you for and after the storm.